Welcome to the SGPN Fantasy Football Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, presented to you by Shady Rays. Go to shadyrays.com and use code SGPN for 50% off 2+ pairs of polarized sunglasses. We're also brought to you by the Golf Gambling Podcast Tailor-Made Stealth 2 Driver Giveaway. Head over to sportsgamblingpodcast.com sportsgamblingpodcast.com/driver to enter today before the big drawing on April 8th. We're also brought to you by Baseball Money is Fake, our fantasy baseball podcast. Join Blake and Ryan 3 times a week and get all the player breakdowns and statistical data you need to dominate. So we're continuing our player profiles. We've got about 31 of those up there on our YouTube channel, SGPN Fantasy Football. Make sure you like, subscribe, and do all that fun stuff. Appreciate it. It's a free way to support the show. Here we're going to talk about Mr. Chase Brown. And so Chase Brown last year was an absolute workhorse. He had 329 attempts for 1,632 yards. That was 5.0 yards a carry, 10 rushing TDs. He added 27 receptions for 240 yards. So that's almost 10 yards on the receiving. And you're looking at a guy that almost had 400 touches last year, 360 touches basically, was a workhorse. And this is a college football season, not a 17-game NFL season. He comes in at 5'11", 205 pounds. And Brad, let's get 3 pros, 3 cons, and 1 player comparison, maybe a couple player comparisons for Mr. Chase Brown.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to go, the first one's pretty obvious. If you watch the film, you watch the tape, when he hits the hole and he has some space, he's got the speed to pull away. He is definitely one of the faster guys on the field, and actually showed that at the combine, that he was really probably one of the most athletic running backs coming out of the draft as well. His second one is going to be his vision. Now, look, he's good at finding the hole. He's good at seeing how the blocks are coming to fruition, and he has the speed to hit that hole. The problem is he really is only able to get you what the defense gives him. He doesn't create a lot of yardage. He's not a guy that's real elusive or anything like that, but he does have the vision to see and get what yardage is there. And I think that's a pro, right? Being able to see the hole and see how your blocks are developing is a good thing. And especially if he ends up in a spot where he's got a little bit of an offensive line to give him some holes, he's got the speed to hit that hole quickly and really produce for the offense. His last pro is going to be his pass catching. And you can see over the 3 years, if you're looking on the screen or if you're watching on YouTube, if you're not, his freshman season, he had 7 catches, followed that up by 14 in his sophomore season, and then 27 last year. Just an enormous amount of touches from a totality perspective. But he really does have pretty clean route running ability. He's got pretty clean hands. And I think that's going to translate to the next level for him, where really I think he kind of needs to be that change of pace guy. His cons are going to be pass blocking. If you watch the Wisconsin game last year, he gets obliterated by some of these linebackers and cornerbacks that are coming in on blitzes when he's being asked to pass block. That is not his forte, and it's going to kind of limit his ability on third down, which is another reason that it worries me a little bit about him, right? If you think Antonio Gibson, for instance, I'm not saying play style, but Antonio Gibson, we thought, oh, he's got the pass catching chops. He can run on first and second down. He can be a 3-down guy. But then he proved to the Washington football team that he can't pass block, and he gets pulled on third downs and doesn't really get that opportunity. I see a very similar potential here with Chase Brown because his pass blocking is atrocious. It is very bad. His second con is going to be the elusiveness. I kind of alluded to this a little bit. He doesn't really have the ability to make people miss what I see on tape. He can break a big play. Yes, there are times that he makes somebody miss in the open field. It's not very often though. So if he can get to the second level, yes, he does have the speed and a little bit of footwork to be able to make that guy miss and take it to the house, which he had some pretty big long runs that were set up by making that first guy miss, but it's not consistently put on tape for me. And then the last one is power. Even though you can see him at the combine and his pro day and he's got these giant quads, it's not translating to the power that I would like to see a guy his size, just, over 200 pounds, be able to play with. I want to see him play with a little bit more than that, and it's just not there. The other thing, and this kind of packages it all up for him and why I'm going to get to the player comp that I want to get to here in a second, right? Dave talked about his yards per carry being at 5.0 yards in the 2022 season. If you go back and look at the last two seasons of guys that averaged 5.0 yards or less that came out in the draft, number one, none of them are super productive at the next level outside of really one. And I'd argue that he's probably not super productive. And two, they're not really the speed backs that I think Chase Brown is. That's where he lives, breathes, and is at his best, is in that speed game. So in 2021, we saw Isaiah Pacheco at 3.9 yards per carry, right? He runs violent. He has no vision, where Chase Brown has good vision. So not a great comp there. Jaylen Warren, running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers, 4.8 yards per carry, stuck behind Najee Harris. Not really the same skill set that I see Chase Brown as either. Third, TDP, Tyrion Davis-Price, late round pick for the San Francisco 49ers. And you can't really say whether good or bad. I think he's in dust at this point with CMC and Elijah Mitchell there. Follow that up with Brian Robinson, totally different kind of back at 4.9 yards per carry. Not the same type of player that we're looking for. I think Kyron Williams is another guy, but the one that's closest for me is probably Chuba Hubbard. So Chuba Hubbard was at 4.7 yards per carry in that 2020 season before he got drafted. Very similar size and very similar skill set. And if you think about it, Chuba Hubbard had like a 19, almost 2,000 yard season, right? Very similar production style, very same pros from a speed and a vision perspective, but not really able to take more than what the defense gives him. But that's not my player comp. My player comp is actually going to be Tevin Coleman. Longtime running back for the Atlanta Falcons and the San Francisco 49ers. And the reason I say that is, one, the size and the skill set, but also I think Chase Brown is going to be most productive as a complementary back. If you think about Tevin Coleman, his best seasons were when he was with Devonta Freeman and was a secondary satellite type back who was getting rushing production plus a little bit of receiving production. And I think that's where Chase Brown can really be best. And if you remember Tevin Coleman, when he left, or when Devonta Freeman left Atlanta first, he didn't have a great season. His production actually went down. And then when he went to San Francisco, his production never got to the point that we thought it was going to, because he's just not that bell cow. He wasn't that bell cow kind of guy. And that production didn't translate to the San Francisco 49ers. So I think for me, Tevin Coleman is going to be the player comp for Chase Brown.
Yeah, and I know you see on the screen, it says Doug Martin. That's compliments of me. And at the NFL Combine, people were throwing around some comps, and I think Move the Sticks might have mentioned Doug Martin for him as well. He's a very muscle-bound player. He's shown it off at the Senior Bowl. You can see he's a brick at 205 pounds. He's got a thick, muscular build. And he's just short, kind of stouter player. One thing I'll say as far as obviously the 5.0 is not a great yards of contact. Zach Evans, 7.0, but Zach Evans also had, a third of the carries. He had a high volume of carries. Positive for him as far as his missed tackles forced. He was tied for third in the nation per PFF with 83. So as far as being able to make people miss, and then yards after catch, he was he had seventh most yards after contact here, not yards after catch, yards after contact. And then as far as the 15 plus runs, he was tied for seventh with 23. And Brad alluded to that earlier with the speed. If he can get in to the second level, he can outrun linebackers, he can outrun corners. And where he really, Brad talked about this, his spot is not as a lead on a team. He's a change of pace back that can, in a pinch, take on the workload, but he's not someone that you're going to put on as the RB1 on your team. And lucky for him, there's not many teams that Saquon Barkley is one of the rare. Christian McCaffrey is one of the rare players. There's only a few of those guys, the Derrick Henrys, that get the majority, 80 to 90% of the workload. Most they're either committees or they're, Batman and Robin kind of situations. And so he's probably not going to be Batman, but I think he'd make a good Robin somewhere. And, he does have a body type where he could withstand, getting 15 plus touches in a game. And, as far as, like I said, as far as a runner, and with Illinois, I'll say this. Who's Illinois' quarterback? Yeah, I don't know either. And so this guy faced a lot of stacked boxes, and he was getting hit behind the line of scrimmage, and everyone knew the ball was going to him, and he still was making plays. And so, and with Hubbard, another good part of it, he's Canadian. So, that's another big part of the comparison there, eh?
Wow, I like how you put that in there.
Yeah, you hear me, meow? So with Chase Brown, I mean he's a 5th round draft projection from PFF, and their comp is Khalil Herbert. So you let us know who your player comp is. We threw about 7 at you, and let us know what you think about Chase Brown, someone that really did blow up the combine. If you look, his 40-yard dash, 92 percentile, speed score, 89th percentile, burst score, 95th percentile, and then bench, he was 86th percentile with 25 reps. I mean, he had a great combine, but he is a little bit older prospect, 23 years old, and he doesn't have the ideal size. If he was 220 pounds,
we didn't even really start with that or mention that, right? He started at I think it was Western Michigan, right? Mm-hmm. And then ended up moving to Illinois when his brother signed with Illinois. So he played 1 season. I'm pretty sure it was Western Michigan.
You're correct.
Where that first season was. So,
yep. All right. Well, hey, thanks for checking out this episode. And as far as our other episodes, go to SGPN Fantasy Football and check those out. We have one more thing for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is a great place to get down with fantasy and player props all year long. Underdog Fantasy has your favorite NBA, NHL, and Major League Baseball daily games. Plus, they're all already doing best ball drafts for the 2023 season. So head over to underdogfantasy.com and use promo code SGPN for 100% deposit bonus of up to $100. Again, that's underdogfantasy.com, promo code SGPN.
All right. Well, as always, good luck this season.
Cheers.